Well, to say that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not having a good week, bit of an understatement. Chrystia Freeland's resignation as finance minister came as a shock just hours before the fall economic update. Here's how Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre reacted.
To patriotic Liberals across the country, my message is this. You supported this government in good faith because you thought it was the right thing for the country. And you are good and decent patriotic people who have been let down by a Prime Minister and his top advisor, Mr. Carney, who have betrayed Ms. Freeland and you.
Mr. Poilievre, can you clarify, you do not accept the possibility that Mr. Trudeau could resign and there could be a leadership? You think there needs to be an election right now?
Yes.
So that's Pierre Poilievre with the Conservatives. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says the focus should be on the cost of living and making life better for Canadians.
And instead of focusing on these issues, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are focused on themselves. They're fighting themselves instead of fighting for Canadians. For that reason, today I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
Will you declare no confidence in the Liberal government as soon as possible?
All tools, all options are on the table. People are hurting, people are struggling, and so all options are on the table.
So today on the show, we want your take on what's happening in Ottawa. Is it time for Trudeau to go? And what if he doesn't? Call us at 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Well, back in the summer, we had a show dedicated to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. A lot has changed since then, and our guests from that original show have been glued to the news this week. Stephen Marr is a longtime political journalist and author. His latest book is called The Prince, The Turbulent Reign of Justin Trudeau. Stephen spent a year and a half interviewing hundreds of people, including Trudeau, to get a detailed account of the highs of the Trudeau era and a sense of when and why things started to go wrong. So, Stephen, welcome back to Blue Sky in a very busy week. Hello.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. And then joining me in our Saskatoon studio is Daniel Westlake. He teaches political science at the University of Saskatchewan. Welcome back to the show, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
There's so much to talk about, and so much has kind of happened, and all the think pieces now on what happens next. But I kind of want to start at the beginning and just how each of you reacted when you found out Chrystia Freeland was resigning. Stephen, how did you react?
I thought, holy smokes, good for her. And this ought to bring about the end of the Justin Trudeau era.
Daniel, what was your reaction?
It took a while for it all to sink in. I mean, the immediate reaction is, well, what's going to happen with the fiscal update that Chrystia Freeland
right,
is supposed to announce? And then as things looked messier and messier, the question of, how does Trudeau get himself in this situation? Right? What is going through his mind when he goes to the finance minister the Friday before the fiscal update and says, I'm going to move you, but I'm going to move you a couple days after you announce the fiscal update, which you happen to disagree with. That shows to me a lack of a lack of careful political thought about how he's treating cabinet ministers, and then just the mess in Parliament when you have a bunch of opposition MPs, quite rightly, annoyed that, they were expecting to go in and hold the government to account for its fiscal update, and the government didn't have a fiscal update they had one, but they weren't in Parliament presenting it, shows a contempt of Parliament that I think is very concerning. And so, in the immediacy, I think part of my mind goes to, how does the Liberal Party move forward from this? But another part gets very concerned about what this says about how Justin Trudeau is treating particular institutions, and it's something that has been building over decades, where different prime ministers have not had, I think, the requisite respect for both their cabinet colleagues and Parliament as a whole.
I think that our listeners today are going to have some thoughts on this. I think they've been dying to share their reactions. So today's the day, folks. Give us a call, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Stephen, I want to know more about your reaction, holy smokes. And I want you to put in context the relationship between Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. She has stood by him, and I think that's why, in many ways, it was such a shock for people. But who is Chrystia Freeland in relation to Justin Trudeau until now?
Well, she has been crucial to Justin Trudeau since before he was Prime Minister, since Trudeau, Katie Telford, and Gerald Butts persuaded her to leave Reuters, where she was a high-flying news executive, and run in a by-election for the leader of the third party in the House of Commons. So she, from the very beginning, validated the candidacy of Justin Trudeau, who was at that time a former high school teacher seeking to become Prime Minister. So she was crucial then. She was crucial throughout, particularly during the first Trump government, when she was the lead political negotiator in a very difficult process, and would show up over and over again at scrums, with having not slept and worked through the night and holding the line and dragging the process out until the Americans ultimately said uncle and signed a deal fairly similar to the deal that we had when we started. So, and she has grown ever more important as Deputy Prime Minister. And throughout the government, particularly in more recent years, whenever you would kind of have doubts about Trudeau's capacity to run the country, you could kind of think, well, I guess he's got Chrystia in there.
Mm-hmm. The number of times that she said she had full confidence in the Prime Minister, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so she was a crucial player, and it's astonishing to me that he would have been so careless as to let her get offside with him in the way that he did. It shows a kind of arrogance or carelessness, capriciousness that is going to cast a dark shadow over his place in history, I think.
And Stephen, what do we know? How the details of the interaction, and Mark Carney's name keeps coming up. I'm just wondering how much you actually know about what Trudeau's plan was, and then of course we know the outcome. But how much do you know?
Well, I mean, we know that he called her on Zoom on Friday and said, I've got an exciting new role for you, which doesn't involve being finance minister, and Mark Carney's going to take that job. And I'm told the shuffle was to happen yesterday, Tuesday.
But then Mark Carney didn't get the job.
No.
Yeah.
No, after she blew it all up, Carney said, well, I guess that doesn't look like something I want to do after all. Reasonably enough, right? He would come in under a terrible cloud. So he created a situation where it was better for her to go than to stay, because the last thing she was going to have to do on Monday was deliver a fall economic statement with a $60+ billion deficit that included this holiday tax gimmick that she hadn't wanted to include in the first place. So I find it deeply disconcerting, basically. What was Trudeau thinking? In the past, I know that there are occasionally talks between prime ministers and finance ministers where the prime minister says, well, we're thinking of maybe changing things around and moving you. And the finance minister says, well, I will quit. And the prime minister says, well, never mind, you can stay in the job. Right? Like, these things happen. And the fact that Trudeau would have proceeded without that kind of feeling her out is surprising.
I want to remind people that earlier in the day, Sean Fraser announced that he would not be seeking re-election, and it was quite an emotional statement that he made. And I think that was a pretty big deal to lose Sean Fraser. He was characterized as one of, a strong communicator for the Liberals, maybe one of the strongest, if not the strongest. But then Chrystia Freeland's announcement trumped all of that. But I just wonder if both of you could just comment on that, because it's obviously not just Chrystia Freeland. There have been others. Sean Fraser was a big deal, but we hardly talked about that because of Chrystia Freeland. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's telling. I mean, it's not surprising for a government that's running this low in the polls that you'd have ministers thinking about whether there might be other things they can do rather than, stick around for an election where they could lose their seats, or at best they're going to end up in opposition, and in quite a small opposition. So I'm not shocked to see a number of people jumping ship, but I mean, it's telling that when you have, and I don't think this is unique to Justin Trudeau, I think Stephen Harper may have had similar problems. When you have a prime minister, when you're in this kind of situation, and you have a prime minister that has a history of perhaps not treating valued cabinet ministers as well as perhaps he should, then you're asking somebody to stay on in a situation where they're going to fight an election where they could lose, they're not going to get a lot out of it. The question becomes, why do you stick around, right? And if you don't have the rapport with the prime minister, that makes you kind of feel that sense of loyalty that it's worth, going down with the ship. Well, of course, people are going to start jumping ship, right? Like,
we have a caller on the line, but I just want to ask you just quickly, and then we'll get more into it. But what's he going to do? Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? Stephen, what do you think?
I think he has to go. He has to announce a timeline for his departure, and I think he has to do that before January 27th when the House resumes. I think the sooner he does it, the better. Singh has said that he thinks Trudeau should resign. It would be difficult for the NDP to now vote to support this government again. So the only thing that I can see Trudeau doing to call off the hounds who are after him would be setting a timeline for his departure.
And if he doesn't do that, Stephen? Is there a scenario where he doesn't? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, if he doesn't want to accept reality, right, that his time, he's not going to lead the party into the next election, then I would expect more high-level departures. It's not a tenable situation. And I should say, I am finding it very upsetting that the government of Canada, in a moment of peril, with Donald Trump threatening to annex us, that we have the government of Canada in chaos, right? Like, I'm disappointed in the situation. This is not what we expect from the leader of the country.
Daniel, what are you expecting from the leader of the country next?
So I'm not sure what to expect, but what I would say is that in any party, a leader who's lost this much support and confidence from his own elected MPs should go. The problem in Canada is that we don't have a clear mechanism for members of parliament to force their leader out. If this was the UK or if this was Australia, he'd be gone a long time ago. And to give the British examples, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson found out that you can only push your caucus so far in Britain before MPs tell you to leave. It's remarkable to me that he's lost this much support within his own party and is still around. So having seen that, I don't know what to expect moving forward.
And everybody's heading off on Christmas holidays right away. Interesting timing. Okay, so let's go to some callers. So Bill joins us in Saskatoon. Hey, Bill, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, thanks. Your guests have already commented on the one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I guess I wanted to look at things from a little bigger picture. Like, we have some structural issues about how we run government in this country, and one is how the prime minister is selected. We use the process of the party selects the prime minister, and that's, to me, the wrong process. It should be the caucus, and then the caucus has a lot more power. And then, in my view, that brings up another big problem that we have, and that is we've created, I believe this started to happen under Pierre Trudeau, this thing that we now talk about all the time called the PMO, the Prime Minister's Office. And it has way too much power, and it's actually turning democracy on its head, where there's no, I would say, respect, even for what ministers do and what caucus can do and all these other types of things. So I was just wondering if your guests could comment on those issues, and if they see any way forward to how we would try and fix these problems, so that we can have a government that's actually much more responsible to the people that elect it. Thanks very much.
Yeah, Bill, thanks. And Daniel looks eager to answer that question. Go ahead.
So I think the PMO, I think the centralization of power in the PMO is a concern. But But I think it's useful to look to the UK here. I think they do this actually reasonably well. Some of this is internal to parties. So the British Conservative Party has a committee that its job is to kind of facilitate leadership challenges. And there are processes in the British Conservative Party for MPs to vote no confidence in their party leader. And that was part of the process that forced Boris Johnson out as Prime Minister in Britain. There are other things that Britain does well that just empowers members of Parliament. So they reduce the ability of the Prime Minister and party leaders to make appointments to oversight positions in Parliament. So in Canada, the people who sit on committees representing parliamentary committees representing the party are decided by the leader. In Britain, they're not. They're decided by the party caucus as a whole. And so that allows MPs to make more. It allows MPs to make more of a decision as to who will represent them in parliamentary business, and reduces the power of the leader to say, if you don't follow what I want you to do, I won't put you on the committee that I would like. The other thing with Britain, and this is hard to adopt in Canada because people don't like having more politicians, but Britain has a lot more members of Parliament, which means there are a lot more members of Parliament in Britain that know they're not going to get into cabinet, that they'll never get into cabinet, and therefore don't have the same incentive to be liked by the leader. They're in a situation where they'll get reelected in their riding, they'll never get into cabinet. They're going to say what they want because the kind of disciplinary, the carrot and stick effect of, well, don't disagree with me or you won't get into cabinet isn't there to the same degree for a bunch of those members of Parliament. That's a hard thing to fix in Canada. I mean, British Parliament's got over 600 members. I don't think Canada's going anywhere close to that anytime soon.
Stephen, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
I agree with that analysis. A large percentage of the Liberal caucus is now getting some kind of money that is granted at the whim of the PMO. They're a cabinet minister or parliamentary secretary. They sit as the head of a committee, so you don't have a large enough group of people with who are not getting money that can be withdrawn from the PMO if they say something the PMO doesn't like. Something else I would say, though, a second point that your caller made was about leadership. I think he's right that it's sort of unfortunate that we've developed this system where the parties select the leaders rather than caucus. Although there's an argument to be made for it in that you don't want to be a prisoner of one region if your caucuses only represent, say, Western Canada and you're the Conservatives, right? Like, there's a danger that you could just have a succession of leaders who are good at appealing to Western Canada. But it appears to me that a lot of what's going on is a sort of presidentialization of our politics. Justin Trudeau led an enormous wave in 2015 based on he and he alone. There really were not regional chieftains in the way that there used to be. You think of in the past someone like Don Mazinkowski or John Crosby, these people who sort of played an important role in standing up for a region. And increasingly, voters are just focused on the leader, and that's come to be reflected in the power, the mandate that those leaders then have in office.
Let's go to another caller before we take a news break. So James joins us here in Saskatoon. Hey, James.
Hi. How was everybody today?
Good. What are your thoughts?
Yes. Well, I tend to think that everybody's kind of really looking at this in a retail level as opposed to the level of sophistication that I think that it is. If we take a look back, just in very recent history, we would say that no less than a month ago, the slight on Chrystia Freeland would have been that she was a poor communicator. Even as finance minister, many people said that there was problems with the government's initiatives of affordability being echoed back into the populace. And so now what we end up having is just through the advent of one letter. She actually hasn't said anything. She just crafted a really well-written letter, and all of a sudden now she seems to be the victim of victims. And I think that understanding Katie Telford and Gerald Butts and the players that do go on there, I think that there's more of a level of sophistication, and that this is probably more purposeful than it is not. And the reason I draw that parallel is because I found it interesting that she attended after being rebuted by her leader and what one would also suggest is maybe the party. She showed up at both a fundraiser and also a party event. So I tend to think that maybe there's a little bit of kabuki theater. Further to that, I thought it really telling, and the reason I think people need to kind of give this some consideration. I see an old stalwart on CBC Power and Politics yesterday, nobody less than the god of Eddie Goldenberg, talking about we're in such challenging times. We're in challenging times. He said that no fewer than 8 times. And I tend to give consideration, and I'm fearful, I'm incredibly fearful, that the Liberals are looking at enacting the Emergency Act once again, and therefore extending their reign of government to an extended period. And at the cornerstone of this,
I think our guests might disagree with you on that one, James.
I'm sure they will. But I think that they were naive, because at the end of the day, the other thing we see Gerald Butts working with Mark Carney, and that doesn't happen by accident. So
we have to pause there, James, because we've got to head to news headlines. But I always appreciate you calling. Thank you.
You have a great day.
I'm Leisha Grabinski. You are listening to Blue Sky today, and we are talking about all that's going on in Ottawa. Stephen Marr, one of our guests, called it chaos, and a lot of people, I think, would agree with that. So Stephen Marr is a longtime political journalist and author. His latest book is called The Prince, The Turbulent Reign of Justin Trudeau. And we also have with us in our Saskatoon studio Daniel Westlake. He teaches political science at the University of Saskatchewan. Before we go to another caller, any thoughts that are top of mind that you want to get off your chest before we move on to possibly another angle here, Daniel? Or
I think, and this came up after the issue way back with SNC-Lavalin, Jody Wilson-Raybould. Sometimes you get this discussion like, why does the person that doesn't like the leader anymore want to stick around in the party? Right? Wilson-Raybould wanted to stick around. Freeland said she's sticking around. And I think that's a dangerous way to look at things, because I think it's important that political parties aren't just the leader. Right. And so somebody can say, I have a problem with particular policy Justin Trudeau is advocating for, the way that Justin Trudeau is approaching the Prime Ministership, while still caring about the Liberal Party and believing in the general principles of the Liberal Party. And a healthy political party would allow for that. And one of the ways we can push back against leaders who are too strong is by making sure they've got healthy political parties that can push back against their own leaders. So I think we should be very careful if we look at somebody like Chrystia Freeland and say, well, she clearly has problems with Justin Trudeau. Why is she sticking around? Well, say, look, she can still be a Liberal and have problems with Justin Trudeau. And in fact, I think it's important for the Liberal Party and the Conservatives and the NDP all to have members of their party that aren't completely offside with their party leaders, but that have disagreements with their party leaders and are able to voice those disagreements without being perceived as being disloyal to the party.
Does Chrystia Freeland maybe want to lead the Liberals, Stephen?
I think she does. I think that's her play. And good luck to her. She might get there. Eddie Goldenberg, the Chrétien's former right-hand man, had a column yesterday saying that the Liberals should forget about having a leadership and just put her in charge and go to an election. I don't think that's likely. I have some breaking news from my phone in that another backbench MP, Jenica Atwin, from Fredericton, New Brunswick, has called on Trudeau to leave and said that she won't run again if he's the candidate. This is the mechanism that will be used to force him out if he doesn't set a timeline, is members of Parliament will say, I am not going to run. I'm not going to vote for this government unless Trudeau announces he's leaving, and I'm not going to run under the party if he's the candidate. That's where this is going. That's what Justin Trudeau the situation he has created for himself.
Okay, well, keep that phone handy, because who knows what's going to happen in the next 25 minutes. I'm glad you're paying attention to everything, Stephen. It's hard to keep track of all the things, because he does still have his defenders, and we'll kind of get to that in a moment. But let's go to another caller. So Wayne joins us right now in Beaver Flats. It's near Swift Current. Wayne, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. I'm bunkered down here in my man cave in front of a nice fire, and I'm listening to you folks. And first of all, this is my opinion. The country's not in chaos. Let's just settle down. Let's not get all wound up like a tea kettle here. The country's not in chaos. We're not going to be invaded by Trump. And this is not Trudeau's decision. And those of your guests and others that follow politics, and I have for 50 plus years, it's not Trudeau's decision. It's the Liberal Party war machine's decision. And they're making that decision over the next couple of days. It's the old stock of the party, the Martins, the people that supported Chrétien and the first Trudeau, Bronfmans, Molsons, Labatts, where all the money comes. They're making that decision as you and I are talking on this talk show right now. If they want to win, and don't forget, we still have the lowest debt in the G7. Let's not forget that. Let's not get all wound up that the country's going to hell in a handbasket. Yes, we need a new leader. The Liberals will win the next election federally if Trudeau goes. Carbon tax is gone. Lower the GST by 1%. Stop. Put a moratorium on additional appointments to the Senate. And they have to. Of all of these, Trudeau is number one. He's got to go. But second, if not first, the Liberals have to win. They have to change the momentum in Quebec. Right now, the Black Québécois is making huge popular gains in some of the oldest Liberal, including Papineau, Westmont, Trudeau's old riding there that's been for 40, 50 years a Liberal stronghold. That's in question now. They have to stop this wave of Black Québécois sentiment that's happening right now in Quebec.
Okay,
if they can win Quebec, I'm just saying, if they can do that, the Liberals will win the next federal election.
I want to know what our guests think because the polling sure says otherwise. Thanks for calling, Wayne. Appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so who wants to go first? Daniel?
I mean, there's a lot there. I think we should be very careful about thinking the leadership change is the solution. Like, it's the thing that's going to fix the Liberal Party. My worry there for the Liberals would be that, I don't think Justin Trudeau has done himself any favors with this past kind of couple of days. A lot of what I think are broader perceptions of problems with the country, a poor economy, cost of living, etc., are being projected onto Justin Trudeau. The bottom line is it's difficult for incumbents to win after this long in government. Mm-hmm. It's also difficult for incumbents to win when the economy is perceived this poorly. And changing the leader does not fix the state of the economy, cost of housing, or the length of time that the Liberals have been in power. The other point to make about Quebec is historically Quebec was the pivot. And historically who won Quebec would tend to win the country. But that was a time when Quebec voted in a block almost. When the Liberals won in Quebec, they won the vast majority of seats in Quebec. When the Conservatives won in Quebec, and it was rare, but when Mulroney would carry Quebec, they'd win most of the seats in Quebec. That tends not to happen anymore. And the emergence of the Bloc Québécois as a competitor in Quebec means that the vote in Quebec is a lot more divided than it's been. And so for the success of the Liberal Party, it's no longer a case of they win Quebec, therefore they end up winning, or the Conservatives, they win Quebec, therefore they end up winning. They can't lose a lot of seats in Quebec and win, but they need to do more than just win in Quebec if they're going to win elections.
Stephen, what do you think? If the Liberals did end up with a new leader, could they gain ground with the Canadian public?
They have the potential. I wrote a column in the New Year Maclean's predicting that Poilievre will become prime minister in 2025. He has had a 20-point lead for 2 years, and his game keeps getting better. There are, I think, lots of legitimate questions to ask about him and his plans before people mark their ballots, whenever that is. But it sure looks like Poilievre is headed for the PMO. That said, right now, the Prime Minister has been thoroughly discredited. People are just tired of him. They've been tired of him for a long time, for something like 2 years. And if there's a different alternative, people will have a different calculation to make. If the next election is a referendum on whether Justin Trudeau should keep being Prime Minister, we don't even need to hold an election. We can just put Poilievre in there. If there's another leader, then maybe the election can be about something else, about how we should respond to Trump, about the best way to balance the environment and natural resource extraction, what kind of economy we should have. So it's not a fait accompli. And hopefully Trudeau will get out of the way so that we can have a different kind of conversation other than the one about whether he should keep being Prime Minister.
Yeah. I want to talk to you more about Trump, but just before we get to some callers and then we'll get to that, I just need to ask about the process a bit, and maybe I should have taken more poli-sci classes. But, you hear Pierre Poilievre saying it's up to Jagmeet Singh, we need to have an election. So, what are the different possibilities here? I read that Justin Trudeau could prorogue government. I'll be honest, I actually don't know. And I think people are wondering, well, how soon could there be an election? So maybe in the most simple, quick terms, Daniel, what is possible next?
Well, the Liberals could call an election. I don't think they will, but that would cause an election. The second option, assuming the Liberals don't want to do that, is a vote of non-confidence. And that would require all three opposition parties to vote no confidence in the government and call for election.
We've had a few attempts at that already.
Yeah, so the NDP would have to make a decision to vote no confidence.
I guess that could happen fairly soon.
They said they might.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then Parliament needs to be sitting for a no confidence vote to come up, and there needs to be a point at which an opposition, and then the opposition gets points during the schedule to move motions. One of those points has to come up. We're probably not looking at I don't think we're looking at Parliament coming back until late January.
Yeah, didn't you say January 27th, Stephen? Was that the date that you kept?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we have to wait at least until then.
Okay.
The Liberals could prorogue Parliament and kind of hit restart on Parliament and hold Parliament out longer. The political legitimacy behind that would be tricky, right? Like Harper did in 2008. He looked like he was going to lose a non-confidence vote right after the 2008 election, prorogued Parliament, and
flashback.
was able to do something. But
Right.
that only worked because the Liberals got cold feet. And when Parliament came back, said, okay, we're not going to move a no-confidence motion. If the opposition says, look, whenever Parliament comes back, we're going to move a no-confidence motion. Well, you can only hold Parliament out for so long before you have to have them meet. And the more you hold Parliament out when the opposition's mad at you, the harder it's going to be to convince a party like the NDP to vote that they have confidence in the government.
Okay, let's get to a couple emails. Go ahead, Stephen. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just point out that if there's a confidence vote, I'd be curious to see whether Chrystia Freeland and Jenica Atwin and Wayne Long would vote for the government.
Oh.
So that this is how the game plays out, is that a significant number of Liberals say, if you don't announce that you're leaving, we are going to bring you down with Pierre Poilievre, and you're going to have to lead the country into an election. That's where we're headed.
So interesting. Okay, this is good stuff. Grab the popcorn. There's a lot to watch for here.
That would be unprecedented. To see members of the governing party vote no confidence in their own government. I can't think of a time when that's happened.
Wow. Okay, let's go to an email.
We were pretty close to that, I think, in '63 when the Diefenbaker government fell apart over the Beaumark missile crisis. And he did lead the government into an election after that. That could happen. A son of Saskatchewan, if I'm not mistaken.
You've got a good memory. Okay, so Harwood sent us an email. Harwood writes, there's a basic limit of 2 terms in the history of Canada, 8 to 9 years. We need that enshrined. Trudeau has done well on his time after the anyone but Harper days. Now it is anyone but Trudeau. He can leave a great legacy if he does several things: proportional representation, mandatory voting, 2-term limits, impeachment procedures, give the common people power to keep politicians accountable. Let's go to a caller right now. So Ralph joins us in Cabri. Hey, Ralph.
Oh, hi. Good topic here. Yeah, I think Justin Trudeau should step down. I think that there would have been a vote of non-confidence a while ago But I'm sure the NDP and the Bloc looked across the aisle and saw Pierre Poilievre. So he's a guy who wouldn't even get security clearance, and he wants to be the prime minister. Maybe he's afraid of finding out how he got put in by foreign interference. But anyways, I just don't know this. And a lot of this started by this sane washing of Trump. Like, he just said things to get people stirred up. They could have had an act. They could have figured something out to maybe how to counteract it, keep it under their belts, and not get all worked up over it. I think Chrystia Freeland did a fantastic job the last time she confronted Trump, and he does not like talking to her. He tweeted about it.
No.
Found it toxic because she's a strong woman, right? And I don't know. I think we'll be getting out of the frying pan going into the fire if we get Poilievre in there. But I don't know. Anyways,
Thanks,
I
Ralph.
think he should step down, and thanks.
Yeah, appreciate the call. And that was a really good setup for talking about Donald Trump and his reactions. Where to start? Talking about Canada as a 51st state. He has not been kind to Trudeau or to Chrystia Freeland. Stephen, this is it's an important moment. You keep hearing people say, like, we've got to have it together. Like, this is a big deal. And so what are your thoughts on that relationship and where we go from here?
Well, I'm very disappointed that and worried that the government of Canada is not responding to the provocations from Mr. Trump. He's saying, repeatedly that the United States should annex Canada, that he's referring to Trudeau as a governor. It seems to me that somebody needs to go on Fox News and say, well, Canadians don't want to join the United States, thanks all the same, and that's subsidy. He's saying, well, there's $100 billion subsidy. We're subsidizing Canada, Trump is saying. And the people who are watching Fox, the people who are believing Trump, will believe that to be true, unless somebody from Canada points out that $100 billion is money that they pay for oil, right? Like, and which we could sell to someone else if they don't want to buy it anymore. The Liberal government is not organized enough to get someone to deliver that message, and I'm finding it increasingly worrying.
Yeah. Daniel?
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think, oddly enough, we are seeing responses from the premiers, right? So saw Doug Ford, and I don't know that this is a good idea or not, but get up and say, well, maybe we should stop selling electricity to the United States. And if you're in Michigan or in one of these border states that gets electricity from Ontario or Quebec hydro dams, that would be concerning, I think, to some individuals in those areas. But the problem is there are 10 different premiers with different interests. And, well, I think there's certainly a lot of people that could be useful. There needs to be some coordination from the federal government for this. And I think there's enough common interest for there to be coordination, but that requires a federal government that has its act together and isn't kind of distracted by its own kind of internal crises that it's facing now. So that,
and also it brings to mind just the relationship between, say, our premier and Justin Trudeau. Not exactly it's a bit frosty, and always has been. So just what are your thoughts on that? The dynamic there.
My hope is that they'd be able to work together on this. And my instinct is that they should be able to, just because for all the fights they've had over carbon taxes and other like domestic policy, they do have a common interest in trade with the United States and maintaining that relationship. And so my instinct was they'd be able, that common interest would win out over past disagreements. But that requires a federal government that's willing to coordinate.
The Prime Minister... Oh, go ahead, Stephen. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick point. In my book, The Prince, The Turbulent Reign of Justin Trudeau, which is available, I hope, in stores in Saskatchewan.
Possible Christmas gift?
Yeah, it makes a lovely gift. I had a really interesting interview with Brad Wall, who, when Trump was last president, he and Mr. Trudeau are not good buddies, but he played an important role going down in the United States to talk about the importance of Canada-U.S. trade. And we had a Team Canada approach. I do not believe that Justin Trudeau could ask Scott Moe to go down to Iowa and give a speech about the importance of Canada-U.S. trade at this time. The situation is such that we need a change. We need a different prime minister in order to arrange these things. And ultimately, before that much longer has gone by, an election, right? I don't think there should be an election with Justin Trudeau at the helm of the Liberal Party. I know the Conservatives are desperate for that, but I don't think that's much of a choice for Canadians.
He still has supporters, though. I want to play people some tape. This is Liberal MP Mike Kellaway, unless there's been a change, but he's from Cape Breton. He spoke to the CBC's Steve Sutherland shortly after learning Chrystia Freeland had resigned as finance minister.
What do you think of Justin Trudeau as leader?
I think he's been amazingly resilient, Steve, to be quite honest with you. Since COVID, it hasn't been an easy ride for sitting governments in Western democracies. We've seen, in many cases, certainly incumbents having a difficult time getting back in. We've seen, in many countries, a strong pivot to not just right of center, but a hard push in the right. It's been a tough time. I mean, and it did start with COVID, and it's kind of led into inflation, wars, challenges on all fronts. And an easy thing too, and I've certainly had the opportunity to teach leadership in University of Calgary and certainly teach it in other informal settings. It's really easy to be the leader during the good times. It's really, really tough to be a leader in the not so good times in terms of the economy and things of that nature. But he is super resilient, and I think and certainly has had the challenges over this past year with respect to a number of MPs not overly happy with, I think it was about 2021. But I did see him talk to each and every one of them and kind of listen to their concerns and listen to where their problems were. And he, I think, did push through reasonably well on that. But again, I've seen this guy close up. I think he is spirited. He's a fighter. And that's been put to the test this year, for sure.
So that's Mike Kellaway, Liberal Member of Parliament in Cape Breton. He was speaking to CBC host Steve Sutherland. Let's go to another caller. So Cam joins us in Pangman. Hey, Cam.
Hi, I'm an American, and now I'm a dual citizen. I'm an American-Canadian. And I don't think you want to go towards the right, and I don't think you want to let Mr. Trump panic you. He's not even president yet, and all he's done is shoot his mouth off a few times, and Canada is running around with its hair on fire. I would defend Mr. Trudeau. I think he's done a great job. I wouldn't abandon him. We saw what happened when the Democrats abandoned Joe, and then they went with Kamala, and it didn't work out very well. So I think you have to stick with him. Or why isn't Jagmeet Singh a good choice? Do you have to go hard right with Pierre Poilievre, who will be a Canadian Trump? And I would like also to say Mr. Trudeau did a lot of great things. He didn't put in the proportional representation that he said he would, and that's too bad. We wouldn't be maybe in some of this situation. But he did legalize marijuana, and I don't hear anybody talking about that. And no one else did it, and no one else would have done it. And so I'm just there to defend Mr. Trudeau. I think he's great. He's a lot better than us Americans are stuck with Trump. I voted for Joe. He did a great job, but Joe doesn't get any credit for that. So it's just one of those things. I'll hang up.
Sorry, there's just so many people calling and we're almost out of time. I appreciate hearing that perspective, Cam.
Bye-bye.
Bye. It's Cam and Pangman. I want to give the last word to our guests today. Stephen, hearing that MP call Justin Trudeau resilient, you heard that caller kind of defend Trudeau. How would you characterize Justin Trudeau now? I mean, you did so many interviews.
Yeah, he's right. He is resilient. The clearest example I saw of that was the blackface business, where he managed to attend a rally in Truro, Nova Scotia, after he knew that the story was going to drop, and then apologize until there was nothing anyone could say. That I thought his resilience was on display last night when he gave a speech at the Liberal Christmas party. So he has extraordinary personal qualities. I don't mean to say that he's a terrible person or a weak person or anything. And he's not the first person to find himself in this situation. The string is up, buddy. Everybody knows you're a fighter. You're not going to win this one, right? Like, it's not working out, right? You can hear the music.
We're going to start to hear the music from Blue Sky. It's going to play us off right away.
Yeah, I'll stop.
Daniel, what are your final thoughts?
It maybe end where I started, where I don't think it matters what I think about Justin Trudeau anymore. Party leaders are there to lead political parties, including members of Parliament, through Parliament. And I think a critical thing for party leaders, and something we lose sight of, is they must maintain the confidence of their own party. And the point at which Liberal MPs say we're not comfortable with Justin Trudeau leading us, that's the time in which I think he has to go. And I don't think we reached that point yesterday. I think we reached that point quite a while ago. And I'm concerned that Canadian parties can go this long with MPs saying our leader is no longer the person we want speaking for us, and still have that leader in place.
This has been a fun show. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. I appreciate it. Daniel, thanks.
Thank you for having me.
And Stephen, so good to have you today. Thank you.
What a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll share one more email from Marcella, who writes, Justin Trudeau has been the best Prime Minister Canada has had in my lifetime. Having said that, I was too young to be in the know during Diefenbaker's time. Because of Justin's mother, Justin is more caring about people and has taken on a servant role. We are not the United States, but will soon be if Pierre Poilievre becomes Prime Minister. Beware of someone, basically Pierre, who wants power so bad that he has brainwashed the electorate with his misleading ads. So what I would like to know is, what has Trudeau done so bad that everybody wants to have him step down? Trudeau's minority government showed it cared for the people with the CERB policy, childcare, pharmacare, dental care. With Pierre Poilievre, Canada will be the 51st state in no time at all. Stop promoting Pierre just because he has money to advertise false propaganda. And of course, more emails are coming in with a completely different perspective. You might as well keep writing us because we read them all and we appreciate your thoughts. So bluesky@cbc.ca. I'm Leisha Grabinski. You've been listening to Blue Sky here on CBC Radio 1.